Donald Trump today publicly admitted for the first time his failure in the war against Iran and is begging partners and allies to help him. The White House admitted that they were overconfident and did not expect Iran to blockade the Strait of Hormuz, and now they are asking allies to help do something about it. US President Donald Trump announced today the complete destruction of Iran's military potential, but warned that the country is still capable of carrying out pinpoint strikes on shipping. And then there was a completely unexpected address from Donald Trump. Just yesterday, Trump stated that he doesn't need any help from Ukraine, the United Kingdom, France, and so on, because the US can handle everything perfectly well on its own. And today, Donald Trump publicly addressed allies and partners. Today, Donald Trump publicly addressed China, the United Kingdom, France, Japan, and South Korea, calling on them to send their military forces, ships to the Strait of Hormuz to jointly patrol this strait and protect the vessels. And this is surprising because just a few days ago, Donald Trump himself stated that the American fleet would independently restore order in the Strait of Hormuz. But it turned out that the American fleet even refuses to escort the tankers. And now today, Trump suddenly asked the allies for help. Let me remind you that last month. Donald Trump spoke disparagingly about his allies, for example, Britain and France, and now he's asking them for help. My name is Alexei Pechi. Let's discuss this topic together. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, give it a like, and leave any comment under this episode. And also subscribe to my Telegram channel Peachy News. The link is in the description of this video, where we post breaking news as it comes in. So, today is March 14th. On March 14th, Donald Trump officially admitted that the United States cannot handle the war against Iran and the consequences that have arisen. Yesterday, the White House was simply shocking in its incompetence. Donald Trump's administration did not expect that Iran would actually close the Strait of Hormuz. As CNN sources stated, the Pentagon and the US National Security Council significantly underestimated Iran's readiness to block the Strait of Hormuz. They also failed to calculate the consequences of the so-called worst-case scenario, which is exactly what Donald Trump's administration ended up facing. Just listen to this. Trump didn't expect Iran to blockade the Strait of Hormuz, meaning Trump was sure he would end the war very quickly. Just like it was in Venezuela, and Tehran would never dare to blockade the strait. You have to understand that usually, when making a decision, analysis and forecasts are taken into account. The Department of the Treasury, and the Department of Energy. Well, that's how it was in all previous US presidential administrations at least. That is, financiers, economists, energy experts, and so on were always involved in planning military operations to calculate any likely consequences and how to deal with them. And here's what CNN writes, citing sources. Scott Bessent and Chris Wright were present at all stages of preparation for the conflict. But Trump's preference in foreign policy to rely on a narrow circle of his closest advisors led to debates about the economic consequences of closing the Strait of Hormuz being overlooked. Now, the Trump administration is trying to downplay the consequences of closing the strait. Trump is urging the crews of merchant ships, I quote, to show some balls and go through the strait. At the same time, the Pentagon itself refuses to escort the ships, considering it too dangerous at this stage. Do you understand what's happening? That is, Trump started this war without considering all the possible consequences. And now Bessent and Wright, the US Treasury and Energy Secretaries, are trying to sort out the problems in the oil market. And lifting sanctions from Russia is one of the attempts to stabilize the oil market, as is, by the way, the release of US strategic oil reserves. Moreover, it is known that during the latest meetings, at closed briefings, congressmen simply pressured the Trump administration over the lack of an operational plan to unblock the Strait of Hormuz. The White House doesn't know what to do with it now. The problem was that the Trump administration underestimated Iran's willingness to close the strait, thinking it would hurt Iran more than the US. Supposedly, Tehran would think, scratch its head and say, no, well, the consequences are worse for us, so we won't close it. Плюс, во время 12-дневной войны. In June 2025, Iran also threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz, but never took action. And so Trump was sure that this time too, Iran definitely wouldn't go for it. But that's not all. Trump confidently stated that, with an oversupply of oil and gas on global markets, record levels of American production, and expectations of rapid expansion of production in Venezuela, closing the strait would not lead to such global consequences. Everything will be fine, even if they close it. The Trump administration was more focused on how positive the market reaction would be in the event of a successful operation and the complete elimination of the Iranian threat. But Trump simply dismissed the negative scenario and refused to even consider it. And here I'll remind you that even after the war began, Donald Trump stated that those who talk about problems in the oil market are simply idiots. I'm not making this up, that's his quote. Go check his social network. Go to Truth Social and read what he wrote. He wrote that you don't understand. These price swings only last a day or two, and those who panic, he says, are just idiots who don't understand. And back then, Trump promised that the United States of America would start escorting merchant ships with American warships. But the Pentagon stated that they would not do this because it turns out to be dangerous. After that, Trump urged oil carriers to just send their goods. Tankers go through the Strait of Hormuz at their own risk, hoping that such a massive passage of tankers will simply stop Iran from attacking. Moreover, Trump started just mocking and saying, "Why are all of you such cowards around here?" Well, send your tankers through under the missiles and just break through this blockade. He says, what's the big deal? And in this situation, you'd have to be blind not to see that Trump, really messed up. The US President's administration has begun a large-scale reduction. They're draining the US Strategic Petroleum Reserve meant for emergencies. The US is releasing 172 million barrels of oil from its reserves. And here, I'll just remind you that. Not so long ago, Donald Trump criticized former US President Joe Biden for using the strategic oil reserves to contain prices after Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, accusing Biden of taking this measure for political reasons. And now Trump is doing exactly the same thing but on a much larger scale, yet for some reason he no longer sees any political motives in it. Just this morning, Trump announced the complete destruction of all of Iran's military potential, but warned that the country is still capable of carrying out targeted strikes on shipping. Trump claims that Iran has almost no missiles left, its navy is destroyed, and there are no living officials left in Tehran who are capable of giving orders. But in response, Iranian official Mohsen Rezai stated today that Iran is ready to discuss ending the war only under two conditions. Tehran demanded reparations from the US for the damage and the withdrawal of all American bases from the entire Persian Gulf. Next, I will quote him. "The end of the war is in our hands. We will consider ending the war only when, first, we receive full compensation for all our losses from the United States, and second, we receive a 100% guarantee for the future, which is impossible without the withdrawal of the United States from the Persian Gulf." As a result, today Trump finally admitted weakness and called on world leaders to join in protecting the Strait of Hormuz from attacks by Iran. Trump publicly appealed to China, the United Kingdom, France, Japan, and South Korea, urging them to send their warships to the strategic region. But next I will quote Donald Trump. "Many countries, especially those affected by Iran's attempt to close the Strait of Hormuz, will send warships together with the United States to keep the strait open and safe. Despite the fact that Tehran's main forces have been defeated and its leadership completely decapitated, the risk of small sabotage operations remains. It's easy for Iran to send one or two drones, launch a missile, or lay a mine along the waterway. The United States will heavily bomb the coastline and constantly destroy Iranian boats and ships. One way or another, we will soon make the Strait of Hormuz open, safe, and free." But the most important part of this quote goes like this: "I hope China, France, Japan, South Korea, the United Kingdom, and other countries affected by this artificial restriction will send their ships to this area, so that the Strait of Hormuz will no longer pose a threat from a country that has been completely decapitated." Sounds odd, doesn't it? Still, that's what the American president said. Interestingly, today the Wall Street Journal writes that before the war began, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, directly warned Donald Trump that an attack could prompt them to close the Strait of Hormuz. Trump acknowledged such a risk, but decided to go ahead with the operation, believing that Tehran would capitulate much sooner than it would block the artery. But what's interesting in this situation is that today Trump is asking Britain and France for help, even though not long ago this same Trump, was openly insulting the leaders of these countries. Let me remind you, as Axios writes, during the virtual meeting of G7 leaders last Wednesday, Donald Trump mocked the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer, because of his initial refusal to grant the US access to British bases for strikes against Iran. When Britain finally said, okay, we're ready to help, Trump mockingly declared in front of everyone that, it's already too late, and that Starmer, as he put it, wouldn't be able to latch onto the big US victory. Well, as they say, manuscripts don't burn. On March 8th, Donald Trump writes, quote, "The United Kingdom is considering sending 2 aircraft carriers to the Middle East. We don't need them anymore. We don't need people who join the war after we've already won." On March 14th, that is, today, Trump writes, "I hope China, France, Japan, South Korea, and the United Kingdom will send ships." Friends, I don't know, it's just sad. Donald Trump looks so pitiful. Why are you throwing these poisonous phrases at your allies, trying to mock them, shouting that you don't need help? Ukraine offers interceptor drones, you say you don't need that help. The British offer destroyers, you say you don't need them. They tried to take credit for my victory, but we've already won this war. And after these boastful statements, Trump says, "Allies, partners, please send your ships to the Strait of Hormuz." Well, of course, we've already won this war, we've already defeated Iran, but send them anyway because it turns out protection is needed for tankers and civilian vessels. So, Donald Trump, make up your mind. Have you already won? Have you defeated Iran or not? The real problem is that the Strait of Hormuz is blocked, and the Americans can't unblock it on their own. Just start calling things by their proper names already. Why? I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. Friends, if you found this episode useful or interesting, you can support our channel with your donation or sponsorship here on YouTube. All the links and details are in the description of this video. I would appreciate your support. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.